I'm Leo, 31 male. I live alone in a small but meticulously organized apartment that overlooks the city's chaotic yet beautiful skyline, a view that has always brought me a strange sense of peace. By day, I'm an architectural drafter, a job that suits my need for precision and order, translating abstract ideas into concrete functional plans. For the past year, my life has been a blueprint of its own, a carefully constructed routine of work, gym, and recovery meetings, each day a brick laid carefully upon the last, building a new, sober life. This party was meant to be the capstone, a celebration of 365 days of winning a war no one else could see. But instead of a celebration, I received a lesson. Sometimes the people who are supposed to be your foundation are the ones who want to see your structure collapse. Before this story unfolds, I'd love to connect with you. Please let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's amazing to see how far these stories can travel. The air in my mother's house was thick with the scent of roasted chicken and something cloyingly sweet that I couldn't quite place. It was supposed to be a familiar comfort, the smell of home, but today it felt suffocating. Dozens of balloons, a mix of silver and gold, were tethered to furniture, bobbing gently in the currents of air created by guests moving through the crowded living room. A large, professionally printed banner hung crookedly over the mantelpiece, declaring, "Congratulations, Leo, 1 year sober," in a cheerful, almost mocking font. I stood near the entrance, a glass of sparkling cider in my hand, feeling like an exhibit at a museum. People I hadn't seen in months, aunts, uncles, old family friends, kept coming up to me, their eyes filled with a mixture of pity and morbid curiosity. They declap me on the shoulder, their hands lingering a second too long, and say things like, "You look so much better," or "We were all so worried about you." Each comment, meant to be encouraging, felt like a reminder of the person I used to be, the ghost they were all so relieved to see exorcised. My life's greatest struggle had been turned into party small talk. My sponsor, Marcus, had warned me this might be difficult. "A celebration like this," he'd said over coffee that morning, his voice a low rumble, "it's often more for them than it is for you. It's their way of closing a chapter they found uncomfortable. Just keep your own reasons for being sober front and center." He was right, of course. Marcus was a mechanic, a man who understood that if an engine's foundation was cracked, no amount of shiny new paint could fix it. He'd been sober for 15 years and was my anchor in the storm of early recovery. I'd met him at my lowest, a trembling, hollowed-out version of myself, and he'd shown me through his own quiet example that it was possible to rebuild. I scanned the room for my sister, Isabella. She was holding court by the kitchen island, a flute of champagne in her hand, her laughter sharp and loud. She was 2 years younger than me, an investment banker who moved through the world with a confidence I'd always envied and slightly resented. We used to be close partners in crime during our childhood, but as we grew older, our paths diverged. My slow, artistic nature clashed with her relentless ambition. When my drinking spiraled out of control, the chasm between us widened into a canyon. She saw my addiction not as a disease, but as a personal failing, a stain on the family's reputation. Her support during the past year had been performative at best, a few sterile text messages and a general air of disapproval. My mother, Diana, bustled over, her face flushed with the stress of hosting. A retired nurse, she had a tendency to treat everyone like a patient in need of her specific, often unsolicited care. "Leo, honey, are you okay? You're not talking to anyone." "I'm fine, Mom," I said, forcing a smile, just taking it all in. "Well, don't just stand there. Mingle," she chirped, before being pulled away by a cousin wanting to show her photos of a new puppy. I tried to follow her advice, drifting through the clusters of people, nodding and smiling, offering vague answers to questions about my job. "Yes, drafting is going well. No, nothing exciting, just a new commercial building downtown." It felt like I was playing a role, the reformed screw-up, grateful for the applause. The truth was, I felt profoundly alone, an astronaut floating in a spacesuit while everyone else breathed the same air. My cousin Chloe found me by the bookshelf, where I was pretending to be fascinated by a collection of old encyclopedias. Chloe was a graphic designer, and we shared a creative sensibility that made her one of the few people in the family I felt truly understood me. She had a quiet intensity and an uncanny ability to see through pretense. "Surviving?" she asked, her tone gentle. "A barrel." "Why?" I admitted, my shoulders slumping in relief. "It feels like they're celebrating the end of their inconvenience." Chloe's eyes, a warm, intelligent brown, scanned the room. "They mean well," she said, though her voice lacked conviction. "Most of them anyway, they just don't get it, they can't," she nudged me with her elbow. "But I'm proud of you for what it's worth. A year is a huge deal." "Thanks, Chloe, that actually means a lot." We stood in comfortable silence for a moment, an island of calm in the sea of forced cheerfulness. I watched Isabella again. She was talking to a group of her friends, her gestures animated, her face glowing. She looked happy, successful, everything I hadn't been for a very long time. A painful knot tightened in my stomach. I wanted to be happy for her, for the promotion she'd recently gotten, but her success always felt like it was being measured against my failures. The initial plan for the party had been simple, a dry event, no alcohol. It was the one condition I had insisted on. My mother had agreed immediately, her voice filled with a solemn promise. Of course, sweetheart, whatever makes you comfortable, this is your day. For the first hour, it seemed that promise had been kept. I saw people drinking sodas, iced tea, and the sparkling cider I was having. But then I saw a waiter, one of the two my mother had hired for the event, emerge from the kitchen with a tray of champagne flutes. My heart hammered against my ribs. I looked at my mother, who was now busy directing the other waiter, avoiding my gaze. I felt a cold dread creep up my spine. This wasn't an accident. I walked over to the bar that had been set up in the corner of the dining room. Tucked away behind the tubs of soft drinks were several bottles of expensive-looking champagne and a selection of wines. They weren't front and center, but they were there, available. I felt a surge of anger, hot and sharp. This was my one rule, the one boundary I had drawn to protect myself on a day that was already emotionally fraught, and it had been crossed. I looked for Marcus, but I couldn't see him. He had told me he might be a little late as he had to close up his shop. I felt a desperate need to talk to him, to have his steady presence beside me. I tried to tell myself it wasn't a big deal. I was strong. I had gone a year without a drink. I had been to restaurants and bars with friends who drank in front of me. I had navigated the temptations of the outside world, but this was different. This was my home, my family, my supposed safe space. It felt like a deliberate act of sabotage, a test I hadn't consented to. The silent message was clear: we will accommodate your problem, but only to a point. Our desire for a real celebration still takes precedence. The silence of my sobriety was being drowned out by the pop of a cork, and I had a sickening feeling that the worst part of the night was yet to come. The clinking of a spoon against a glass cut through the chatter, a sound that made my stomach clench. My mother stood by the fireplace, beaming, her arm linked with Isabella's. My sister looked radiant in a sharp, tailored dress, a stark contrast to my own deliberately understated jeans and button-down shirt. "If I could have everyone's attention, please," my mother announced, her voice trembling slightly with emotion. "I just want to say a few words." The room quieted down. People turned to face them, expectant smiles on their faces. I felt Chloe's hand brush against my arm, a small, grounding gesture. "First," my mother began, her eyes sweeping the room before landing on me, "I want to say how incredibly proud we all are of Leo. This past year has been a journey for all of us, but mostly for him. He has shown so much strength and commitment, and we are all so thrilled to be here to celebrate this amazing milestone. 1 year, it's just wonderful." A smattering of polite applause followed. I nodded, a tight, artificial smile plastered on my face. It felt like I was watching a play about my own life from a great distance. But my mother continued, and her smile widened. "We also have another wonderful achievement to celebrate tonight." She squeezed Isabella's arm. "As many of you know, my brilliant daughter has just been made a senior vice president at her firm. It's an incredible accomplishment." This announcement was met with a much more enthusiastic round of applause and a few whoops from Isabella's friends. My sister preened, accepting the praise as her due. I felt a familiar pang of resentment. My recovery, a life-or-death struggle, was being presented as the opening act for her career triumph. "So," my mother said, gesturing to the waiter who was now circling the room with a fresh tray of champagne, "we thought it would be fitting to mark this double celebration with a proper toast." The air left my lungs. My gaze shot to my mother's face, searching for any sign that she understood what she was due. There was none. She was caught up in the moment, in the pride she felt for both her children, completely oblivious or willfully ignorant of the implication. A proper toast meant alcohol. A proper celebration required the very substance that had nearly destroyed me. My 1 year of sobriety was being honored with the tools of my downfall. I watched in a state of suspended horror as guests, including my aunts and uncles, accepted the flutes of champagne. Some of them shot me quick, apologetic glances, as if to say, "Sorry, but what can you do?" Others didn't look at me at all. Isabella took a glass, her eyes sparkling with triumph. She raised it high. "To new beginnings," she declared, her voice ringing with confidence, "for all of us." "To new beginnings," the room echoed. The sound of dozens of glasses clinking together was like a series of small explosions in my head. I stood frozen, my own glass of sparkling cider feeling like a child's toy in a room full of weapons. My throat was dry, my palms slick with sweat. The sweet, yeasty smell of the champagne hit me and my body reacted with a Pavlovian memory of what it felt like, the fizz on the tongue, the warmth spreading through the chest, the slow, seductive release of inhibition. It was a physical craving, a ghost limb aching for what it had lost. For a terrifying second, I wanted it. I wanted to snatch a glass from a passing tray and drain it, to silence the screaming in my head, to feel the blessed numbness that had been my only comfort for so long. The thought was so powerful, so vivid, it made me dizzy. I looked at my mother, who was sipping her champagne, laughing at something her sister said. I looked at Isabella, who caught my eye from across the room. She gave me a small, tight smile, a look that wasn't celebratory or sisterly. It was something else, it was knowing. In that moment, I was certain she understood exactly what this was doing to me. The toast wasn't just for her promotion, it was a subtle power play, a reminder of who was in control, who was the success, and who was the charity case. My legs felt unsteady. I needed to get out. Now, I mumbled something to Chloe, an incoherent apology about needing some air, and turned, pushing my way through the crowd. The congratulations and smiles of the guests now seemed grotesque, the faces of smiling demons in my own personal hell. I stumbled out the back door onto the patio, gasping for the cold night air. My heart was pounding a frantic, desperate rhythm against my ribs. I felt a profound sense of betrayal, a pain so sharp it was physical. This wasn't just a thoughtless mistake. The hidden bottles, the timing of the toast, the look on Isabella's face, it felt calculated. They had taken my greatest vulnerability and used it as a party favor. I leaned against the railing, my knuckles white, and tried to remember the breathing exercises Marcus had taught me. In for 4, hold for 7, out for 8. But the air wouldn't come. All I could think about was the image of my family, my own mother and sister, raising a glass to my sobriety with the very poison I had fought so hard to escape. They weren't celebrating my victory, they were dancing on the battlefield where I had almost died. The foundation I had spent a year building felt like it was turning to sand beneath my feet, and I was falling. I pulled out my phone, my fingers trembling, and called Marcus. It went straight to voicemail. "Hey Marcus," I choked out, my voice cracking. "It's Leo. I need help. I think I'm going to relapse." The voicemail to Marcus felt like a final, desperate flare shot into an empty sky. I hung up, my hand shaking so violently I almost dropped the phone. The sounds of the party, the laughter, the music, the clinking of glasses spilled out from the house, each note a fresh stab of betrayal. I felt a wild, frantic energy coursing through me, the kind that used to end with me face down in a bar or waking up in my own bed with no memory of how I got there. The committee, as they call it in recovery, was meeting in my head, and all the members were screaming for a drink. "One won't hurt. You deserve it after this. They've already decided you're a drunk, so why disappoint them?" I shoved the phone in my pocket and walked away from the house, my feet carrying me aimlessly down the darkened suburban street. The manicured lawns and identical houses felt alien, a world I no longer belonged to. I was a ghost again, but this time I wasn't haunting my own past, I was haunting my present. Every step was a battle. My mind was a slideshow of nearby bars, the comforting gloom, the familiar weight of a glass in my hand. I could almost taste the burn of whiskey, feel the false courage it would give me. I walked for what felt like miles, my breath pluming in the cold night air, until I found myself standing in front of a small, dingy-looking tavern called the Lamplighter. Its neon sign flickered weakly, casting a sea-clay yellow glow on the pavement. It was the kind of place I used to love, anonymous, forgettable, a place to disappear. I stood there for a long time, my hand on the cold metal of the door handle. It would be so easy. Just one step and this whole year of pain and effort would be over. The fight would be done. Just as I was about to push the door open, my phone buzzed in my pocket. It buzzed again and then a third time. Annoyed, I pulled it out, ready to ignore whoever was trying to reach me. It was a string of texts from Chloe. The first one said, "Leo, where are you? Are you okay?" The second, "Please answer me, I'm worried." And the third, the one that stopped my heart, "You need to see this. I am so sorry." Attached to the third text was a video file. My thumb hovered over the play button, a sense of dread washing over me. I took a deep breath, turned away from the tavern door, and pressed play. The video was shaky, clearly filmed on a phone by someone trying to be discreet. It was a view of the kitchen, partially obscured by a doorway. I could see Isabella, her back mostly to the camera, surrounded by 3 of her friends. They were all holding champagne glasses, their faces flushed with alcohol and excitement. I recognized the background noise. The video had been taken just moments after the toast. "I can't believe your mom actually went along with it," one of her friends, a blonde woman I didn't know, said with a giggle. Isabella took a long sip of her champagne and then turned slightly, her profile coming into view. The smile on her face was smug and cruel. "Oh, please," she said, her voice dripping with disdain. "Mom's a pushover. I just told her it was ridiculous to have a party without a proper champagne toast for my promotion, that this whole sobriety thing is so dramatic. It's been a year. If he can't handle being around a glass of champagne, then he's not as cured as he pretends to be, is he? My blood ran cold. This wasn't ignorance, it wasn't thoughtlessness. It was deliberate malicious. Another friend, a man in a suit, chimed in, "But isn't that a little harsh? I mean, it's his party." Isabella laughed, a sharp, ugly sound. It stopped being his party when he started making our entire family walk on eggshells for a year. Every holiday, every dinner, it's always, "Oh, we can't do this because of Leo. We have to watch out for Leo." I got a major promotion. I deserved a real celebration, not some sad little pity party with sparkling cider. She lowered her voice, leaning inconspiratorially. "Besides," she added, a wicked glint in her eye, "let's see how strong his recovery really is. Maybe this will be the little push he needs to stop being so self-righteous and boring." The video ended. I stood on the dark sidewalk, the flickering neon of the bar sign illuminating my face, and I felt nothing. The frantic, craving part of my brain went completely silent. It was as if a switch had been flipped. The rage I felt was so pure, so cold, it burned away every other emotion. The craving, the despair, the self-pity, it all vanished, replaced by an icy, crystalline certainty. She knew exactly what she was doing. She hadn't just disregarded my one boundary, she had intentionally tried to make me relapse. She had gambled with my life, with the hardest thing I had ever done, for the sake of her own ego and convenience. It wasn't just a betrayal, it was an act of profound violence, a soul-deep cruelty I couldn't have imagined even from her. I thought back over the past year, the grueling detox, the sleepless nights, the therapy sessions where I'd peeled back layers of myself I didn't know existed, the constant, gnawing work of rebuilding my life from the rubble. And she had tried to kick it all down just to have some champagne. I turned my back on the lamplighter and started walking back towards my mother's house, my steps now firm and purposeful. I was no longer fleeing. I was returning to a war zone, but this time I knew who the enemy was. The fight for my sobriety was no longer just an internal battle against my own demons. It was now an external one against my own family. The video on my phone was the proof, the weapon that had been handed to me. And as I walked, the despair and confusion began to coalesce into a new feeling, resolve. They wanted to see if I was strong. They were about to find out. Walking back into that house was one of the hardest things I've ever done. The party was still in full swing, the volume of the chatter and music having risen with the alcohol consumption. No one seemed to have noticed my absence, or if they had, they didn't care. I felt invisible, a specter moving through the rooms of my own life. The cold rage that had solidified in me on the sidewalk now served as a kind of armor, protecting me from the emotional shrapnel flying around the room. My first priority was to find Chloe. I spotted her near the back patio door, the same one I had escaped through earlier. She was nervously chewing on her thumbnail, her eyes scanning the crowd. When she saw me, a wave of relief washed over her face, quickly followed by a look of deep concern and apology. "Leo," she whispered, pulling me into a small hallway away from the main flow of traffic. "I'm so sorry. I didn't know if I should send it, but I thought you had to know. I overheard them in the kitchen and I couldn't believe it." "You did the right thing," I said, my voice low and steady, a calm I didn't know I possessed. "Thank you, you might have just saved my life." Her eyes welled up. "What are you going to do?" "I don't know yet," I admitted, "but I'm not running and I'm not drinking." I showed her my phone, the call log still showing the unanswered call to Marcus. "I'm going to wait for my sponsor to get here. I need a clear head." Just then, Marcus arrived. He walked in the front door, a large, grounding presence in the frivolous atmosphere of the party. He's a big man with calloused hands from years of working on engines and a face that holds a permanent expression of calm wisdom. His eyes immediately found mine across the room, and he navigated his way through the crowd with the unhurried purpose of a man who is comfortable in his own skin, regardless of his surroundings. I met him halfway, and he put a steadying hand on my shoulder. "You okay, son?" he asked, his gaze taking in my pale face and the tension in my jaw. "You left me a worrying message." "I'm okay now," I said, "but it was close." I led Marcus and Chloe out to the quiet of the backyard, far away from the noise of the party. Under the dim light of a porch lamp, I played the video for him. He watched it without a word, his expression unreadable. When it was over, he was silent for a long moment, his jaw working. "Well," he finally said, his voice a low rumble, "that's about as bad as it gets." He looked at me, his eyes filled not with pity but with a kind of shared understanding. He had seen the depths of human cruelty in his own journey. "The question is, what do you do with it? This anger you're feeling right now, it's a clean anger, it's righteous. You can use it as fuel to burn your life down, or you can use it to fire the kiln and make yourself stronger." His words resonated deep within me. He wasn't telling me to forgive or forget. He was telling me to choose my response, to take control of a situation in which I had been rendered powerless. I don't want revenge, I said, surprising myself with the words. Not in the way she would think of it. I don't want to ruin her career or her life. I looked back at the house, at the silhouettes of my family celebrating inside. I want to be free of them, of this dynamic, of her poison. Good, Marcus said with a firm nod. That's the right answer, so our first step is to get you out of here. You're not staying under this roof tonight. We agreed that I would leave quietly. Confrontation right now, with me emotionally raw and most of them intoxicated, would be pointless and destructive. Chloe offered to go back inside and discreetly pack a small overnight bag for me from the room I used to stay in, a task she undertook with a quiet efficiency that I was immensely grateful for. While she was gone, Marcus and I talked. He helped me dissect what had happened, not as a family drama, but as a tactical challenge to my sobriety. Your sister, he said, she's a trigger, a big one, and your mother, her enabling is another. This house, this whole environment, it's not safe for you right now. Your recovery has to be the most important thing in your life. More important than family loyalty, more important than keeping the peace. He was right. I had been trying so hard to mend fences, to be the good son again, that I had been willing to subject myself to an environment that was fundamentally toxic. My family hadn't changed, I had. And I couldn't keep pretending that we could all go back to the way things were. Chloe returned with my bag, her face grim. Isabella was asking where you were, she said. I told her you had a headache and were lying down. She just shrugged and said, he's probably just sulking. The casual cruelty of it was breathtaking. I felt another flash of anger, but Marcus's words echoed in my head, use it to fire the kiln. I took a deep breath and nodded. Let's go. Chloe walked with us to Marcus's truck, which was parked down the street. She gave me a fierce hug. Call me tomorrow, we'll figure this out. I will, I promised. As I got into the passenger seat of the truck, I looked back at my mother's house, all lit up and full of life. It looked like a perfect picture of a happy family celebration, but I knew the truth. I knew about the whispers in the walls, the poison being poured alongside the champagne. I was leaving my own party, my own celebration, a refugee from my own family. But for the first time, I didn't feel like a victim. Felt like a survivor who had just been handed the blueprints to his escape. The investigation was over. It was time to start drawing up a new plan. The days that followed my escape from the party were a blur of numb efficiency. I stayed on the couch at Marcus's small, Spartan apartment, and for that I was eternally grateful. He didn't pry or push. He simply provided a safe space, hot coffee in the morning, and the quiet companionship of a man who understood that sometimes the best thing you can do for a person is to just let them be. He treated my situation like a broken engine. Assess the damage, find the faulty parts, and then systematically rebuild. My anger had cooled from a raging fire to a steady, glowing coal. It was no longer a destructive force, but a source of energy and clarity. Marcus was right. I couldn't burn down Isabella's life. That would make me no better than her. But I couldn't let what she did slide either. To do so would be to tacitly agree with her assessment of me, that I was weak, dramatic, and deserving of her contempt. My revenge, I decided, wouldn't be about destruction. It would be about construction. I was an architectural drafter. I would use my skills to build something she could never tear down, a life completely and irrevocably independent of my toxic family. The ultimate revenge, I realized, wasn't to make her miserable, but to be unshakably happy without her. The first part of the plan was tactical and financial. For years, a significant portion of my savings had been tied up in a joint investment account with my mother and Isabella. It had been my father's idea before he passed away, a way to keep the family financially connected. It held the inheritance he had left for my sister and me. My portion was just over $80,000. It had always been there, a safety net that I now realized was actually a cage, another point of leverage they had over me. My mother was the primary account holder, and any major withdrawal required her signature. With Chloe's help, I started to untangle the web. She was a master of quiet investigation, her graphic design skills translating surprisingly well to navigating online portals and digging through digital paperwork. She discovered a clause in the account agreement that my father, a meticulous lawyer, had put in place. In the event of a family dispute, a third-party arbiter could be appointed to divide the assets. It was a loophole, a backdoor he had built into our financial architecture. The second part of the plan was emotional. I needed to confront them, but not in a screaming match. It had to be controlled, precise, and on my terms. I needed to reclaim the narrative. They had painted me as an unstable addict. I would show them a man who was sober, clear-eyed, and in complete control of his own destiny. I called a family meeting. I didn't ask, I informed. I sent a short, professional-sounding email to my mother and Isabella. I have some important family matters to discuss regarding my finances and future plans. I have booked a private room at the Oak Room restaurant for this Sunday at noon. Please be there. The Oak Room was a quiet, upscale place, not the kind of venue for a dramatic scene. It was neutral ground. In the days leading up to the meeting, I prepared meticulously. With Marcus's help, I role-played the conversation, anticipating their arguments, their denials, their attempts to gaslight me. He played the part of my mother, then Isabella, forcing me to refine my points until they were sharp and undeniable. I also met with a financial advisor and a lawyer. I wanted to have my new individual investment and bank accounts set up and ready to receive the funds. I was building the new structure before I had even demolished the old one. My lawyer, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Ms. Davis, reviewed the account documents Chloe had found and confirmed that the arbitration clause was my best path forward if they refused to cooperate. She drafted a formal letter of request for the fund division, ready to be sent to the bank. The final piece of preparation was the most difficult. I had to decide what to do with the video. Part of me wanted to play it for them, to watch their faces as they heard Isabella's own words condemn her. But Marcus offered a different perspective. "The video is your ace in the hole," he said, stirring his coffee. "But sometimes the most powerful move is not playing your best card. Sometimes just letting them know you have it is enough. It's about power, Leo. She tried to take yours. This is how you take it back." His words settled in my gut with a sense of rightness. The goal wasn't to humiliate Isabella, it was to liberate myself. The video wasn't a weapon for attack, it was a shield for my defense. On the morning of the meeting, I put on my best suit. It felt like armor. I looked at myself in the mirror, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't see the ghost of a drunk or the fragile man in early recovery. I saw a man who had walked through fire and was still standing. I was calm. I was ready. I was the architect of my own life, and I was about to present the blueprints for my masterpiece. The private room at the Oak Room was tastefully decorated in dark wood and muted tones, with a single large window overlooking a quiet garden. The somber elegance of the place served my purpose perfectly. It demanded a level of decorum that would make emotional outbursts seem crass and out of place. I arrived 15 minutes early to get settled and review my notes one last time. I had a small folder with me containing the bank statements and the letter from my lawyer. I felt no nervousness, only a profound and unsettling calm. My mother, Diana, and my sister, Isabella, arrived exactly on time. Their expressions were a mixture of curiosity and irritation. They had clearly discussed my summons and had come prepared to present a united front. "Leo, really?" my mother began before she had even sat down, her tone one of weary exasperation. "A restaurant? Couldn't we have just talked about this at home?" "No," I said, my voice even and quiet. "We couldn't. Please sit down." Surprised by my firm tone, they exchanged a look and sat. A waiter came to take our drink orders. I ordered an iced tea. My mother ordered a water with lemon. Isabella, with a defiant smirk, ordered a mimosa. I had anticipated that. It was a power move, a small way of reminding me of the party, of her perceived victory. I gave no reaction. Once the waiter had gone, I got straight to the point. I slid a copy of the joint investment account statement across the table to them. "As you know," I began, "Dad set this account up for us. My portion of the inheritance is currently $84,212. I am here to inform you that I am formally requesting to have my share transferred to a new individual account. I have the paperwork here for you to sign, Mom." My mother stared at the paper, then at me, her face a mask of confusion. "What? Why, Leo, that money is our family's safety net. Your father wanted us to be connected." "Dad wanted us to be a family," I corrected her gently. "We are not acting like one, therefore I am dissolving this financial connection." Isabella scoffed, taking a delicate sip of her mimosa. "Oh, here we go, more drama. Is this because of the party? Are you still sulking because we had champagne? God, Leo, grow up. The world doesn't revolve around your addiction." I met her gaze and my calmness seemed to unnerve her. "This is about many things, Isabella, but let's start with the party since you brought it up. You and I both know that you intentionally pushed Mom to serve alcohol despite my one request for a dry event." "I have no idea what you're talking about," she said, her eyes narrowing. She was a good liar, confident, dismissive. "Mom and I just thought it was time to stop treating you like a fragile child." My mother wrung her hands. "We were celebrating you, sweetheart, and your sister's promotion. It was a happy occasion." You were celebrating my sobriety by putting the thing I am sober from directly into my hands, I said, my voice never rising. You didn't just break a promise. You showed me that my well-being, my very life, is less important than your desire to have a proper party. I let that hang in the air for a moment. But that's not the worst of it. I then turned my full attention to Isabella. The worst part is that you did it on purpose. You did it to test me, to push me, and maybe even hoping I would fail, just to prove some twisted point about me being boring and self-righteous. The color drained from Isabella's face. Her confident smirk vanished, replaced by a flicker of genuine fear. I had quoted her own words back to her. She didn't know how I knew, but she knew that I knew. That is a monstrous thing to say, my mother gasped, placing a protective hand on Isabella's arm. Your sister would never do something like that. Wouldn't she? I asked quietly, my eyes still locked on Isabella's. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. I let the silence stretch, watching the panic rise in her eyes as she mentally retraced her steps, wondering who could have overheard her. I never mentioned the video. I didn't have to. The knowledge was enough. I had played my ace without ever showing it. Isabella stammered for the first time in her life, looking utterly defeated. I just thought. I didn't mean for it to. It doesn't matter what you meant. I cut her off, my voice like ice. It only matters what you did, and what you did was sever the final thread of any relationship we had left. I turned back to my mother. And you, Mom, you enabled her. You chose her comfort over my safety. You have always chosen her. The truth of that statement, spoken aloud for the first time, was both devastating and liberating. I pushed the folder with the legal documents across the table. You will sign this, Mom. You will authorize the transfer of my funds. If you refuse, my lawyer, Ms. Davis, is prepared to file a petition to invoke the arbitration clause. It will get messy, it will get public, and it will get expensive. And I will win. But I am offering you the chance to do this cleanly and quietly. This is not a negotiation. My mother looked from the papers to my face, her eyes filled with tears. She saw something in me she had never seen before. Not the lost son, not the angry drunk, not the fragile man in recovery, but a stranger. A man who was calm, resolved, and completely, utterly done. With a trembling hand, she took the pen I offered her. Isabella sat in stunned silence, her mimosa forgotten. The intervention was over, but it wasn't my family intervening on my addiction. It was me intervening on theirs, their addiction to a toxic dynamic that I would no longer be a part of. The signing of the papers was an anticlimax. My mother's signature was a shaky, tear-stained scrawl. Isabella said nothing at all. She just stared at her hands, the fight completely gone from her. We left the restaurant without another word. I didn't look back. As I walked out into the bright afternoon sun, I felt a sense of lightness I hadn't experienced in years. It wasn't the giddy joy of victory, but the quiet, profound relief of a great weight being lifted. The money was transferred to my new account within a week. The first thing I did was find a new apartment. It was a small one-bedroom in a different part of the city, a neighborhood with no history, no ghosts. It was a blank slate. Packing up my old place was a form of therapy, sorting through the remnants of a life that no longer felt like my own. I threw out old photos, sentimental trinkets that now felt tainted, anything that connected me to the person I was when I was still trying to earn my family's approval. Chloe was my rock during this period. She helped me pack, brought me pizza, and listened without judgment as I processed the fallout. Have you heard from them? She asked one evening as we were wrapping my drafting tools in newspaper. My mom has called a few times, I said. I haven't answered. She leaves these rambling, tearful voicemails. It's always about breaking up the family, and how could I do this to her? There's no apology, no acknowledgement of what they did. She still doesn't get it. And Isabella? Silence, I replied, total silence. Chloe nodded. For her, the silence is probably the biggest punishment. You took away her audience. You refused to play her game anymore. She was right. My sister thrived on reaction. My calm, surgical removal of myself from her life had left her with no one to fight, no one to belittle. I had simply ceased to exist for her, and in doing so had taken away a significant part of her power. My new life began to take shape, built on a foundation of my own design. I poured my energy into my work, taking on more complex projects, and found a new level of focus and creativity. I started dating someone, a kind, intelligent landscape architect I met through a work project. I was honest with her about my recovery from the beginning, and she accepted it as just a part of my story, not the whole book. I deepened my commitment to my recovery, not out of fear, but out of a sense of profound gratitude for the life I was now able to live. I started chairing meetings, sharing my story, the real, unvarnished version of it, and found that my experience could help others. Marcus became more than a sponsor. He became a true friend, a mentor, and a father figure. We worked on restoring a vintage motorcycle in his garage on weekends, the smell of oil and metal a new, healthier kind of therapy. About 6 months after the confrontation, Chloe called me. "You might want to sit down for this," she said. She told me that Isabella's firm had gone through a major round of layoffs. My sister, whose entire identity was wrapped up in her career, had been let go. The brilliant senior vice president was out of a job. Apparently, her abrasive, arrogant attitude, which had been tolerated when she was making the company money, had made her an easy choice for the chopping block when times got tough. She had alienated too many people. I felt a brief, dark flicker of satisfaction, the part of me that still craved old-fashioned revenge, but it passed quickly, replaced by a surprising sense of nothing. Her misfortune didn't bring me joy. Her success no longer caused me pain. She was just a person I used to know. Her story was no longer connected to mine. The final piece of my new life fell into place on the second anniversary of my sobriety. There was no party this time. I celebrated it with Marcus, Chloe, and my girlfriend. We went for a long hike in the mountains, ending up at a scenic overlook as the sun began to set. As I stood there looking out at the vast, beautiful expanse, I realized that true sobriety wasn't just about not drinking. It was about reclaiming your life from everything that was trying to poison you, whether it came from a bottle or from the people who were supposed to love you. I had spent years trapped in a blueprint designed by others, a structure that was unsound and destined to collapse. The last year had been a painful demolition. But now, standing on my own 2 feet, surrounded by people who saw and supported the real me, I knew I had finally built something that would last. A life of my own design on my own terms, and it was beautiful.